entrepreneurs. I came to the United States to pursue a master's in computer science at USC in LA. I had a scholarship, loved my experience being part of the education system, getting a master's, learning from people who were innovating things themselves and teaching students on how to do that themselves. So to me, that was incredible experience being able to be there, being able to be a part of that system was incredible. Right after I graduated, I moved to the Silicon Valley Bay Area to do an internship here. And throughout my career, I've worked at startups, and my very first job was also at a startup. Small group, trying to innovate, trying to take an idea from something that they know there's a solution to it and trying to work on it. That was just so inspiring. Being able to be a part of that and seeing that and experiencing that inspired me to start my own business. And throughout this whole process, what I went through as I came over as a student visa, I got an H-1 visa, working for different employers, and I was, as Geetha mentioned, always tied to that employer. It was definitely very limiting. And the whole process takes a long time. There's a lot of uncertainty in that process. But finally, I was able to get a green card and realize my vision of starting my own business. And I think that's really important. And being able to share that with you folks and being able to be a part of and create a voice in this debate on immigration reform, I think is really critical. Personally, immigration reform is important to me, but just as an individual, I care a lot about finance. I'm really, I think a lot about it, and when you think about your own personal finance, you think, oh, there's a cost, right? You spend money on the gas and electricity bills, and you spend money on, there are costs that are in your daily life. But you also make investments if you want to, grow and be successful. And you invest in a bank and put money in a savings account, or you invest in the stock market. Comprehensive immigration reform is just like that, right? You have border security, which is needed. It's a cost, but you need to have that. At the same time, you need to invest in people. You need to invest in people who will be creating jobs, who will be bringing innovation and driving the economy forward. And that's where people like us and entrepreneurs and having something around that is really important. So thank you for having us here and letting us tell our stories.
Our first question was intentionally to draw out comprehensive responses from each of our 5 panelists. The next questions will be very interactive among our panel and more conversational in nature as well, because one of the common arguments that we hear, especially outside of the Bay Area, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, is that immigrants take American jobs, that they compete against Americans, they use public resources, they're not paying for anything. What would you say to address these concerns? And again, we're going to think lightning round on these responses because we want to make this as interactive as possible. So, Mayor Lee, would you like to take that first? How do you respond to critics of immigration reform?
Well, first of all, you got to look at the real data. And the Economic Institute did a study not too long ago. When you got the talent, particularly in the technology job, with people with the high degrees that they have that we want to retain here to help us create more jobs, you'll find that with every technology job, there are at least 4 other local jobs that are created and sustained by that technology job. So what that says is if you keep the talent in America, other jobs will come attached to that. That's invaluable for a city like San Francisco. Because we're experiencing it. How did we get, in the last 2 years, from 9.6% unemployment rate where I first started to 5.2 just announced last month?
It's because of your great leadership.
No. Thank you, Carl. But it's because this fact is very true. With the technology growth comes other jobs that are coming along with that. And that's invaluable to our tourism industry, to our healthcare industry, to our hotels, to all the other support services, and the labor unions know this, so that's why they're backing this up very much as well. They know, and the facts are, that these jobs are being created because the talent is here. And this is what I think Julie said earlier, it's a talent war out there. We've got to keep the talent here. People who spent their years getting these MBAs, and I know I saw Robert Corrigan over here, former chancellor of our San Francisco State. We spent gobs of money and effort and investment in these young students. For them to have to then leave after the trouble with the H-1B visas, and in their prime, when they're the most creative, when the economics of their ideas is right there in front of us, we can't get the kind of immigration policy we have to keep that talent going here. That's a failure of our country if we don't do this.
Mayor Lee, great points about data-driven conversations to dispel those myths. Maria Odom, I'm going to turn it over to you. Give us that data. What is that argument that the White House uses, not only for high-tech, but low-tech and no-tech as we talk about comprehensive reform?
Sure, it is. Well, first I want to reiterate the findings that were presented last week to Congress that immigration reform will actually play a major role in us reducing our national deficit. So I think we need to take a look at those numbers very closely and recognize that even with a so-called surge at the border and a major investment in the infrastructure of the border, that we will still see the great impact that immigration reform will bring to our national economy. And I will not repeat what Mayor Lee said because he hit it right on the nail, of course. The supporting business and strengthening business in our economy and keeping the right talent in will create more jobs. So we continue to drive that message home. The majority of Americans, when you look at the numbers, support this common sense approach, support creating more jobs, fueling our economy with the right talent, and fueling our economy with the right folks we have been educating. So when you look at the numbers and the polling, most Americans do support a common sense approach to immigration reform, and they will see the benefits in their communities. I've represented many companies and seen the impact at the local level, and I think it requires all of us to come and show the impact both at the state and local level and the national level, but especially at the state and local level for what fueling the economy through job creation does for the community. I think we get very focused on the national level economy when the real stories are really at the state and local level, and I think Mayor Lee is doing a great job in showing what is happening here in San Francisco and what immigration reform can do for cities like San Francisco and even smaller towns across the country. So I think the message should stay state and local level first, and then we'll see the boom at the national level.
Let's hear from our young CEOs and entrepreneurs, whoever would like to respond. Rutul, Alexander, Geetha, you're creating jobs here in the United States, you're paying taxes, you're adding to our economy. When you hear this from people, what is your response? What do you think?
I've definitely paid a lot of taxes, so that's, I think the short answer is, yes, Silicon Valley would exist if that was not true. The case of, creating more jobs, everyone should want a good job is for domestic jobs. I feel like that Silicon Valley would not exist without it. I've spent enough time in the Valley to know that, work with really interesting people who from all over the world. And they're successful people, and they're passionate about America, and they're passionate about being here and creating impactful work and doing impactful work, and they are contributing to the economy. There's no doubt about it.
Alexander.
So the example that I usually like to give is football, right? Imagine that you are the 49ers, right, and we are going to be playing against another team, and you're not supposed to have more than 11 people in the field at any given time. But what if the other team was allowed to do that, right? They might have 12, 13, 14 people. And to some extent, that's what's happening with immigration. I mean, you have to see the US as a team that is competing against many other teams, which are the other countries. And we are limiting the amount of people that we can have in the field at any given time, while the other countries, Canada and the rest of the planet, is actually allowing good talent to compete in their team against us. The idea of not allowing new talent to come to the 49ers, new players that are awesome, or even allow the team to grow if you are capable of doing that, is nonsense from a competitive perspective. You want to have the best of the best, and you want to have the largest team you can have in order to beat the competition.
Geetha?
So I have this commercial playing in my head, so if you will, just imagine with me, all these comments being played out, immigrants take our jobs, immigrants are lazy, they're feeding off of our system, right? And then imagine that the same comments actually have been made as each immigration wave happened, like the Italians, the Irish, and now it's the Mexicans, and it's the same comments, but somehow they've become Americans and they've contributed to the society and they're growing because when you take a diversity of ideas, they only can do good things and they don't actually take your jobs. And as somebody said, and I think it was probably Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, the way we have today, the system, is we have a help wanted sign on one side, on the other side we have a voter with guns, right? So that's really not a good place to be in.
Let me build on that then, because again, the vote in the Senate is happening. We believe it's going to be successful and overwhelmingly so in a bipartisan way, as America should operate. The real battle is going to be in the House. So let's talk about that battle in the House. And without naming names, a group of about 80 of our CEOs with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group met with some key House members just recently. And one of those key House members said to us, well, we're going to, quote, we're going to take care of you high-tech folks, don't worry, but who really cares about who picks the strawberries? Well, I like strawberries. I don't see a lot of American-born citizens out there wanting to pick strawberries. It was lost on him that we would care as tech leaders about anyone other than tech. We do. We want to see comprehensive immigration reform for all of America and all Americans. So as we go to the House side from each of you, and why don't we start with Maria, what do we need to do to make sure that we get something that we can work on once we have a Senate bill passed, and perhaps not a House bill passed that's comprehensive, that might be piecemeal? How do we reconcile this and move it forward? How do we win over the House?
You know, I was speaking to a group of API leaders earlier, and we all agreed it was a funny timing for gathering today with the Senate vote later today, and really it was important to lay on the table that the work is not done, because we'll see this major vote in the Senate later this afternoon, and I think there's a sense that there isn't a space to change what is in the Senate bill, and I just want to reiterate that the space is still wide open. It's still wide open in the House. The administration continues to have confidence that there is a good bipartisan effort in the House. We may not get everything we want to get. We may not get everything we're asking for. The administration remains committed to a balanced approach that includes both high-skilled and low-skilled labor, because we recognize that both are needed. I've worked in Georgia for many years, and I traveled to worlds, the worlds that included Kia Motors relocating to Atlanta, and us facilitating the transfer of some of their essential executives. But I also traveled the fields, in southern Georgia, and struggled to represent individuals who were agricultural workers who were facing removal. And I straddled both those worlds, and they're both key to our economy. They're both key to maintaining our tradition as a nation of immigrants. And my advice on the House side is, at this point, is that you stay true to your priorities, stay true to the message that you want to get to the House. You've started meeting with key members of the House, and don't think that the process is over because of the Senate vote later this afternoon. And keep the message simple. What I heard earlier today was a very straightforward list of concerns and a very straightforward list of needs and simple fixes that could continue to strengthen your ability to bring essential workers, but to also allow those workers to have the mobility they need to continue to thrive in this economy, and allow in turn you, the employer, the ability to continue to replace those workers and continue to maintain the high level of skill that you need. So stay true to your priorities and continue to voice them loudly would be my advice.
Mayor Lee, we're going to hear from you next, and I want to challenge not only the audience here at Eventbrite today, co-hosted by Kevin and Julia Hartz, the CEOs and co-founders, but the folks who will be hearing this on 1590 KLIV radio as well. From a leadership group perspective, we are 375 member company CEOs, primarily innovation economy space, and one could say, well, yeah, you're in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley and the Bay Area's delegations in the House are already won over. They're on our side, they're our advocates, they're our champions. Our 375 members are in all 50 states, almost all 435 congressional districts. We're rallying them to reach out in those facilities with those employees to those members of Congress in those key House seats. We know that our partners at Business Forward, Agent Advocacy, the San Francisco Chamber, SF City, are doing likewise as well. That's part of our strategy. Mayor Lee, you have been reaching out to other mayors. What is your strategy to make sure that we're not singing to the choir with Nancy Pelosi and others, but that you're leveraging your relationships? And then I'd like to hear from our entrepreneurs.
Well, I can't help but take